Throughout history, both ancient India and Europe made remarkable contributions to human civilization, each excelling in unique ways. Ancient India pioneered advancements in mathematics, developing concepts like zero and early forms of algebra, and made significant strides in medicine with texts like the Ayurveda. Meanwhile, ancient Europe, particularly Greece and Rome, laid the foundations for Western philosophy, political systems, and architecture. Rather than one being more advanced, each civilization shaped the world through its own innovations and perspectives. Picture this. In 628 CE, while European scholars were still clinging to the belief that the Earth was flat, an Indian mathematician named Brahmagupta was calculating the exact circumference of our planet with stunning precision. He wasn't just theorizing, he was using advanced mathematical principles that wouldn't reach European universities for another 500 years. This wasn't an anomaly, it was the norm. The question of which ancient civilization was more advanced has sparked countless debates in academic circles, but the answer might surprise you. When we strip away centuries of colonial narratives and examine the archaeological evidence, mathematical treatises, and technological innovations, a fascinating picture emerges, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. The mathematical revolution that changed everything. Let's start with perhaps the most fundamental measure of civilization: mathematics. While Europe was stumbling through the Dark Ages, ancient India was experiencing a mathematical renaissance that would make Silicon Valley jealous. The concept of zero, without which our modern digital world couldn't exist, was invented in India around the 5th century CE. But here's the kicker. European mathematicians didn't fully grasp and adopt the concept of zero until the 12th century, nearly 700 years later. Aryabhata, working in 499 CE, calculated the value of pi, to 4 decimal places and determined that the Earth rotated on its axis, a revelation that wouldn't dawn on European minds until Copernicus in the 16th century. Meanwhile, Indian mathematicians were developing trigonometry, algebra, and calculus concepts that Newton would later be credited with discovering in the 17th century. The Sulba Sutras, dating back to 800 BCE, contained geometric principles that predated Pythagoras by centuries. Yet somehow, we still call it the Pythagorean theorem in our textbooks. The medical marvels of ancient India. But wait, there's more. While medieval European doctors were prescribing leeches and bloodletting for everything from headaches to broken bones, ancient Indian physicians were performing sophisticated surgeries that would make modern surgeons pause in admiration. Sushruta, often called the father of surgery, was performing cataract operations, plastic surgery, and even brain surgery in the 6th century BCE. His text, the Sushruta Samhita, described over 300 surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments, many of which are remarkably similar to tools used in modern operating rooms. The ancient Indian medical system of Ayurveda understood the circulation of blood, the nervous system, and the importance of hygiene in preventing infection, concepts that European medicine wouldn't embrace until the 19th century. While European cities reeked of sewage and disease, Indian cities had sophisticated drainage systems and public health protocols. The technological titans. Here's where it gets really interesting. The very steel that made European knights legendary? It came from India. Wootz steel, produced in ancient India, was so superior that it became the foundation for Damascus steel, the most prized metal in the medieval world. European metallurgists spent centuries trying to reverse engineer Indian steelmaking techniques, often unsuccessfully. Ancient Indians were pioneers in textiles, producing cotton fabrics so fine they were called woven wind by amazed Roman traders. The dyeing techniques developed in India created colors so vibrant and lasting that European merchants traveled thousands of dangerous miles just to acquire Indian textiles. The decimal system, chess, the concept of infinity in mathematics, sophisticated urban planning. Look at the Harappan civilization's grid-pattern cities with advanced sewerage systems from 2500 BCE. all emerged from the Indian subcontinent centuries before similar developments appeared elsewhere, but let's be fair to Europe. Now, before you start thinking this is simply India supremacist propaganda, let's acknowledge where ancient Europe excelled. The Greeks gave us democracy, philosophical reasoning, and architectural marvels that still inspire awe. Roman engineering, their roads, aqueducts, and administrative systems created the backbone of Western civilization. European innovations in warfare, governance, and law laid foundations that influenced global political systems. The Greek approach to scientific inquiry and rational thought, the Roman genius for organization and infrastructure, these weren't minor contributions. They were civilizational game changers. The Renaissance and Enlightenment that followed would eventually catapult Europe ahead in many fields. But here's the crucial point. This happened much later than the period we're examining. The Great Reversal. Why history got rewritten. So how did we end up with a narrative that portrayed ancient Europe as the pinnacle of civilization while ancient India was relegated to mysticism and backwardness? The answer lies in one of history's greatest plot twists: colonialism. When European powers colonized India in the 18th and 19th centuries, they faced an uncomfortable truth. The land they were conquering had a documented history of scientific and mathematical achievements that rivaled or exceeded their own. The solution? Systematic erasure and reframing. Colonial administrators and scholars downplayed Indian achievements, attributed Indian discoveries to Greek influence, or simply ignored inconvenient evidence. Ancient Indian universities like Nalanda and Takshashila, which attracted students from across Asia and housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, were either destroyed or their significance minimized in historical accounts. The narrative that emerged painted Indians as spiritually inclined but scientifically backward, a convenient justification for colonial rule. "They need us to bring them into the modern world," became the refrain, even as Europeans were adopting Indian numerals, mathematical concepts, and medical practices. The archaeological evidence doesn't lie. Recent archaeological discoveries have shattered many colonial-era assumptions. The Harappan civilization's sophisticated urban planning, with standardized weights and measures, advanced sewerage systems, and evidence of complex trade networks, predates anything comparable in Europe by millennia. Ancient Indian texts describing metallurgy, chemistry, astronomy, and medicine have been found to contain accurate scientific information that challenges the timeline of human knowledge. The precision of ancient Indian astronomical calculations, recorded in texts like the Surya Siddhanta, rivals modern measurements. Carbon dating and archaeological evidence consistently support the antiquity and sophistication of Indian achievements, making it increasingly difficult to maintain outdated historical narratives. The verdict that changes everything. So, who was more advanced? The answer is nuanced but clear. In mathematics, medicine, metallurgy, textiles, and urban planning, ancient India held a significant edge for most of the ancient period. Europe's strengths lay in military organization, governance structures, and systematic philosophical inquiry. But here's the most important revelation. This wasn't a competition. Ancient civilizations learned from each other, traded ideas, and built upon each other's achievements. The Silk Roads weren't just trade routes, they were highways of knowledge exchange. The tragedy isn't that one civilization was better than another. The tragedy is that centuries of distorted historical narratives have hidden one of humanity's greatest collaborative achievements: the collective advancement of human knowledge across cultures and continents. Understanding this truth doesn't diminish European achievements. It enriches our understanding of human potential and reminds us that innovation and brilliance have emerged from every corner of our world. The next time someone asks who was more advanced, perhaps the better question is, what incredible things can we accomplish when we recognize and build upon the achievements of all civilizations? The ancients knew something we're only now rediscovering. True advancement comes not from competition between civilizations, but from collaboration across them.